Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our event today. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan Nation and their peoples. I also acknowledge that you are joining us from near and far, and I want to acknowledge the traditional owners, past and present, of those lands as well. My name is Rod Rue. I'm the AVP of Wealth and Relationship Services at Interior Savings, and I'm also a volunteer for Habitat for Humanity in the Okanagan. And welcome to the 8th annual Okanagan Embrace Aging Month, and thank you for joining us today. Embrace Aging is co-hosted by the Institute for Healthy Living and Chronic Disease Prevention at UBC Okanagan, Interior Savings Credit Union, and Interior Health. The Embrace Aging Month was launched 8 years ago to celebrate and raise awareness about positive aging, and we have once again organized a number of educational opportunities and events during the month of March. The sessions are designed for everyone, young and old alike, and focus on a variety of topics related to healthy aging and ways to improve quality of life among seniors and their family caregivers. Our goal is to inspire everyone to embrace positive aging. There's closed captioning. You can turn it off, or you can move the box to wherever you want it placed by clicking it and dragging it wherever you want it to go, or you can select the live transcript button on the menu bar, and you can turn it off that way if you like. During this session, you won't be able to ask questions, but we ask that you type them into the chat box, and I'll be monitoring that, and I will go ahead and ask the questions, whether it be to Jeff or whether it be to Andrea or whoever that happens to be. So today's event is brought to you by Interior Savings Credit Union and Habitat for Humanity Okanagan, and today's session is Leaving a Legacy with Planned Giving. So our guests today are Andrea Manifold. Andrea is the CEO of Habitat for Humanity Okanagan, and she was on the board of Habitat prior to becoming the CEO. And our other panelist, of course, is Geoffrey White. Jeff operates one of the few law offices in BC that is exclusively focused on estate, tax, and charity law. He's received top legal honors in the areas of wills, family property, estates, and client counseling. He's also a guest speaker at numerous professional meetings and conferences. In charity law, Jeff has assisted many charities and donors, and in the past few years, he has arranged more than $100 million of charitable gifts. In many cases, the donors of these gifts received significant tax benefits, as well as the knowledge that their gifts will change lives. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Jeff. So go ahead, Jeff.
Great. Thanks, Rod. It's really great to be here, and so thank you for that introduction. It's very kind of you. I'm great to be here with you, Rod, and with Jaquetta organizing this webinar on behalf of the credit union. And in particular, it's good to be doing this with the credit union and your members. I really very much appreciate the community focus that Interior Savings brings and the great support that it's provided. I've been involved with a number of charities throughout my 30 years of practice, and I know that the charities themselves have benefited directly from what Interior Savings has done with your community development, and I know that your members as well share that commitment. So I couldn't think of a better topic this morning than to be coming to talk about how we can further develop that commitment to helping build our community. I spent quite a bit of time with the Central Okanagan Foundation, who I know you have close connections with as well. And their motto always spoke to me back from that tradition, ancient Roman model of agreeing that what we all want to do is leave our city, our community better than how it was given to us. And that's really what planned giving legacies are all about, is how can we continue on that community commitment to pay it forward into our next generations. And speaking of that, I'm super happy as well, Andrea, to be sharing the screen with you and all the great work that Habitat does. You'll hear later on for the folks attending the webinar about some of the interactions that we've had with some of my clients with Habitat. And I can tell you that they've always been very pleased with the work that Habitat does, and just so grateful to be able to have the opportunity to support that and know that there are people out there making such a difference in the community. And so that's fantastic as well. So as Rod said, I like to think I look younger than this, but I've been at this legal business for about 30 years now. My hairline probably betrays that. And I've been exclusively focused on doing estates and tax and charity work. And it's been my great honor and privilege to be able to help a lot of donors match up with a lot of charities and put community money back into the community to make differences. And it's ranged in terms of what's done. We've had donors who have done relatively small and modest thank yous. And we've had donors who have made life-changing impact gifts that have the potential to improve lives immediately and into the generations going forward. And they're all really important to have done and to do right. What's interesting though is what I found is that it's not really about the legalities or the taxes when we're trying to plan and decide about what gifts are going to be made. There's much deeper meaning that happens with those gifts. And that speaks to me. My parents were Salvation Army ministers when I grew up. And so it was instilled very early in my life the importance of community service and the obligations that to those of us who have been given talents and skills, we have that responsibility to put them back into the community. But moreover than the responsibility, there are also benefits back to us and the deep meaning that it can bring to our lives. And that's what I want to first spend a bit of time talking about. But also, because I am a lawyer and I do have this tax knowledge, I also want to talk to you about the idea that once we've decided to make those gifts, once we've decided to make that commitment, why not do it in the most impactful way that we can? Why not take advantage of the rules that have been set it up so that if we make a gift, we can ensure that some of our tax dollars that might otherwise have been lost can be put back into that purpose. And so if we're going to give, let's do it well. That's one of the themes that I'd like to talk about today. And so the first slide here is just a bit of a montage of some of the areas of legal practice that I participate in. And you'll see that there's a firm named Clark Wilson. That's a firm that I'm associated with. My office is here in Kelowna, and that's where I've spent my legal career. But I also have an association with one of the larger firms in British Columbia that operates out of Vancouver. And so I help them down in Vancouver as well, and they help support some of what I do. And their name is Clark Wilson. But jumping into what I have found. So when I talk to, oh, and I should just remind you as well, I'm more than happy to take questions that you have anytime along. You don't have to wait until the end. If you have a question that you'd like to have asked, please do just send it on to Rod. And he'll just pluck it out of that chat and throw it over to us. I'm going to kind of talk a bit at the beginning. I'm going to hopefully have Andrea tell you a little bit about what some of the impact of this gift is on the charities and how important it is. And then I'm going to wrap it up with some of that technical information. But when I'm talking to my clients, I'm often asking them about first, why it is that they're making the gift. We want to know what those goals are so that we can make sure that it's the right type of gift. And as I've said, over the many years, 3 decades of doing this, what I've found is quite interesting is the effect of this charitable giving. It's not just about the benefit that comes to the charity.
Hey, Jeff, can I stop you there just for a second?
Oh, yeah.
We're having trouble seeing your slides.
Oh, okay. Let's try this again. Yeah, just a second, folks. I'm just going to try that again. How's that?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. I thought I had clicked the button, but obviously I was just too eager to jump into it. Just to take a quick back. So that was just the introduction slide. You didn't really miss anything. It's just setting us up for our conversation. So what I've found is that doing the process of charitable giving and making these gifts ends up being a very deeply rewarding process for the person who is making the gift as well. So it's not just the benefit to the community. Millions and millions of people, and certainly the vast majority of my clients, are giving because they're giving to causes that they believe in. And that fact of giving, the act of giving, actually creates a very positive effect on their lives. So what are the 5 main reasons that I think that there are to give to charity? Number one, it makes you feel good. It's been shown in various studies that charities have done and industry has done that it actually is a mood booster. Giving away and helping charities and seeing a cause that you are committed to advance because of a contribution that you've made makes you feel better. The knowledge that you are helping out other people is hugely empowering. And as I say, there is that research out there that links it not just to that immediate feeling of being able to have an impact, but a long-term lasting level of happiness. People who have a tradition of supporting charities and donating have been shown to actually live happier lives. Reason number 2, so giving to the charity actually helps us by strengthening our own personal values. So that same research has shown that one of the main reasons why people state that they have made gifts is because of that feeling of a social conscience. What I described earlier as that commitment to make our community better than we found it. And for them, the power to help others, they perceive it as a privilege. And with that privilege of having that ability to help comes the obligation of trying to be able to help. A movie that I very much appreciated that many of you will probably know was Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List. And so one of the most poignant moments is Mr. Schindler, after he's done so much and helped so many people, realizing that he still had on his finger a ring, and realizing that that ring, had he sold it and gotten the money for it or used it, might have saved other lives. And what an extreme example of that idea, that to us that have been given and have the opportunity to help, shouldn't we find a way to be able to do that? And what we find is that when we act on those beliefs and we act on that sense of responsibility, it actually reinforces to us that we are living within our ethical beliefs. It's always important to have a sense of who you are and what's important to you and what your ethics are. And the actual act of carrying that out, fulfilling it by making a donation to support those causes reinforces that and just improves your own sense of well-being. So it's good for you. Reason number 3, and this is one that I find very powerful because a lot of what I'm doing in my job is thinking about what are we passing along to the next generation. We talk about wealth and the assets and the real estate and the taxes and how that all gets passed along, but we also talk about what the values are and what the family traditions are that are being passed along as part of that estate planning process. And so charitable giving actually improves not just your life, but your children's life, your family's life. So sharing that experience of giving, not just by you doing it, but also doing it with the kids, shows them the fact that they too have the power to make positive changes in their world. Children are naturally generous and want to be with each other and help each other. And this act of involving them in your philanthropy encourages that and develops it. It fosters a sense and a tradition, in my experience, of appreciation in that next generation, but also the responsibility and the feeling that they can do something about it in that empowerment. So giving not only benefits you, but benefits your family. And then it also encourages others. So beyond that immediate scope of you and your family is the opportunity for your donation, your example, to inspire others to be able to do it. It's one of the main reasons that charities like to be able to acknowledge the fact that you've made that gift. They want to say thank you, but they also want to let the community know about that opportunity to make the gift so that other people might think, hey, I can do that. I believe in that cause and I want to see something happening to it. As I mentioned, doing it as a family, doing it as a group tends to create a bond. When you're working together to back a charity, it creates that special bond for you as a group. It's something that we do in our office as staff, and a number of businesses, like the credit union, for example, will work together and support a cause. It's one of the reasons why so many groups and workplaces like to be involved in the United Way campaigns, because it creates that team building sense of working for a good, strong purpose. And eventually, at the end of the day, when we pass away and we're no longer around, creates this legacy about what this cause was and what was important to us for the nearest and dearest around you. And so one of the things that I'd like to challenge you to do this morning is just take a minute, and if you want to, close your eyes and just think about, who are those people in your life that are the nearest and dearest to you. And just, imagine when the last time is that you all got together. I know that's been a long time. It's been the pandemic. This year has taught us anything. It's the importance of those relationships and the connections that we have. But just visualize that with me and think about where you are and who's talking to who and what's important to them and what they're talking about. And then what I'd like you to do is take yourself out of that picture. And imagine what's there, what remains, what stories are those people talking about from your experience? What are the memories that they have? What do they understand was important to you? And what were those values that they associate with you and that they're inspired to follow? That really, above and beyond what we do with our funds, we have to be, good stewards of our assets. But it's those things that I say are the true legacy that we leave behind us. And a tradition of charitable giving only helps reinforce and support that. And so once we've looked at all those most important things about charitable giving, this is the spot where I get to come in with my career and tell you that the really good news is that once you've decided to make that kind of gift, the rules are set up to help you do it in a way that is more impactful than ever. There are ways that we can take your gift and leverage it up to have even more impact for the charity and more purpose. And so that's really good. I mean, lots of my clients, lots of people generally are concerned that taxes or other costs might impact their gift and reduce what they're actually trying to get done with it. But thankfully, there are ways to make the most out of every donation that you make. And we're going to talk about that this morning. So the theme that I want to get across today is once we've decided to do good, let's do good well. And so before I jump into the technical aspects, I want to tell you a little bit about two of my clients as just some examples. Molly and Carol. This is actually a picture of Carol, and both have passed, and both were quite open about what they were doing. And in fact, Carol was very open about publicizing what she wanted to have done with her legacy. And both happened to leave gifts to Habitat, which is why I've chosen them to talk about. And they made very different types of gifts, though, and they represent that broad range. And they're not the only ones that have made gifts to Habitat or other groups, but I think I've chosen them because they represent the broad range of what you might want to do. Molly made, as what I described earlier, as a life-changing, significant legacy gift. She had a capacity to be able to really honor the causes that were important to her and her spouse after she had survived him. And so she designed her will so that a significant portion of her estate, in fact, all of her estate, in both of these ladies, their estates were all going to charity. And so Molly picked several charities to be the beneficiaries of the remainder of her estate, to share it. She happened to pick larger charities and ones that were very capable of being out in their community and doing things and had a proven track record. And Habitat was one of those groups. And Molly's gift is going to be somewhere in the range of about $1 million that will be able to put people into homes. And I'm going to turn it over to Andrea in just a minute to tell you about the impact of that gift. Carol's gift to Habitat was different. She too gave the bulk of her estate to charity, but she was more focused on advocacy-oriented groups, more what I would call kind of out there, cutting edge, hadn't been around for a long time, but she wanted to take some risks on them and fund them and help them carry forward those issues for people who are suffering from disadvantages. An example would be the Syrian refugee crisis was very important to her. And so she made donations to groups that could do immediate impact work for that. But Carol also very much loved the story of Habitat. And so what she decided was that with her house, which was wonderfully well taken care of and decorated, that rather than just auction things off and have it go out that way, she donated all of the contents of her home to Habitat for them to be able to come in and first determine what items could they take that would be available to help improve people's lives, or things that they could alternately sell and get some value for, and do all of that. And so that was a smaller gift, a thank you gift, I would call it, for what Habitat had done, but very much in line with what Habitat's purpose was. And it helped for her estate. Both of these clients were very, very grateful to be able to make these gifts. And I would certainly say that throughout their lifetimes, they very much took pleasure in knowing that they were going to have the impact and know that that their gifts would help change people's lives. And I know that for both of them, even the small gift from Carol's side, and certainly the larger gift from Molly's side, was something that was appreciated by their family members and by the loved ones who celebrated them after they passed away. And I'm going to turn it over now to Andrea to tell you how Molly's gift in particular is going to carry forward for generations.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, Molly's donation was significant for us, and very timely as well. When we first found out about it, we were just about to start planning for our next build, which is in Lake Country, and we have 12 homes planned on some land there. So when we found out about it, and it was coming to us, when we found out it's coming to us unrestricted, that gave us a lot of freedom to decide how we could use those funds and how we could make the best use of that for our families, because ultimately that is why we exist, and it's to provide safe and affordable homes in the Okanagan. And there is a need for that, and it is so rewarding when we manage to do that. So as you mentioned, it was significant. When we waited a while because of COVID for the gift, and then when it came again, very timely, we were just about starting to put the shovels in the ground. And so what it's allowed us to do is put that, all of those funds are going into that build. And so for this first phase of 8 families who we have now selected, Molly's legacy will stay with them for their lifetime in those homes. I am privileged to work in an organization that is able to do this for families. We see a lot of families who have had hardship, a lot of families that are living in very unsafe areas or unsafe homes, unhealthy homes, underhoused, cramped conditions. So we can't do enough. And the legacy from Molly, it was very rewarding, not just for us to get that, a recognition for us that what we do is valued by Molly. And my only thing is, having the opportunity to personally thank her for thinking of Habitat when she made her wishes known. But now we have 8 families that in less than a year we'll be handing the keys over to. And she had a massive impact on making that happen for our organization. That is money that we would be doing more and more bottle drives for and other smaller events. It takes us a lot of energy and a lot of effort and a lot of organization. And Molly has saved us some work and helped us to get those homes ready faster. So I couldn't be more thankful for that. Carol And her donation, again, a big donation for us to take the whole house, and very thoughtful for her to think about an organisation that has the capacity to take that. People who are familiar with our stores will see we sell a lot of furniture, and what that allows us to do is turn that furniture into cash, which then helps our mission. So it's coming to us in a different way, but the end result is much the same, helping us to provide homes, help families, and it's very satisfying when we're able to do that. So both donations were very, very valued, very much appreciated, and I thank you as well, Jeff, for helping both of your clients to come to that decision, and the work that you do to help people to make those donations. But for me, I was delighted. On behalf of Habitat for Humanity Okanagan, we thank them both for thinking of us, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of the families that will be moving in this year, that how delighted they are that those donations have helped us.
That's excellent, Andrea. It's just great to really hear about those impacts, and I appreciate your thanks, but boy, you know, I just get so much enjoyment out of working with those clients and having the opportunity to see what you guys can do with those funds. It's just a great rewarding experience for me. And so what I would propose to do now is get into the meat of what I promised you, which is, once we've decided to make these gifts, what can we do to actually get some more impact out of them, and really leverage them up? And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how that worked in these examples, but also give you some general ideas that might apply to you, because your circumstances might be a little bit different. And so what I'm going to talk in the last part of this presentation about is the tax incentives, how we can get more impact for some things like capital gains taxes. What's the timing? When is it the right time to give, both for your intention, but also then to take advantage of the tax benefits? How do insurance and annuities sometimes fit into that planning? Who to give to? What's the right recipient to make sure your gift has the impact that you're hoping it will? And then summarizing it, making good gifts great. How do we take your good intention and escalate it up to have that great impact that you want it to have? And then a few takeaway points, so that after today, you can grab even just one or two ideas that you'll be able to follow up as you go forward. So first, the tax incentives. So how does this work? What's the advantage of giving to charity? Well, any donation that is made is entitled to get a credit against what the taxes are that you would pay of up to 45-ish % of what the donation was. It's based on what the tax rates are. And so that means if I make a donation of $1,000, then I will be able to offset $450 of taxes that I would have otherwise paid. Now, during my lifetime, there are some restrictions on that. I can only offset 75% of my income. So if I make the number a little bit larger, and let's say someone's income during the year was $100,000, they gave all their income to the charity, they can only use credits against $75,000 of the income. They can't use it against all of it. But that extra credit that they weren't able to use, they can carry it forward. And so they can use it up for the next 5 years. So you can use your tax credits in the year that you have the taxes. If that doesn't take care of all of it, you can carry it forward for 5 years. But that's actually quite an important consideration, because if you are making a large gift and your income is modest, you may make too big of a gift to use up all the tax credits. Now, that doesn't mean you should make the gift, because that's a gift that you want to make, and the charities will certainly be able to use it. But what we would do is we would just plan the timing of the gift so that it would make sure that you can use it against all of your tax credits rather than missing out. Not only would that save you more money for taxes, but I have regularly had clients, when I explain this to them, say, well, I don't need the money. I don't want it. And to which my reply is, turn it around and give it to the charity. They'll take it. You know, if you're really enjoying doing this giving thing, why not do it in a way that allows you to leverage that gift up? So even if it's not something that you're concerned about for yourself for the tax saving purposes, if you think about it from the perspective of the cause that you're trying to support, why not structure this in a way that gets even more benefits for them? So that's one thing that we look at in terms of lifetime giving. The other part is that any gifts on death, so as a result of your estate, of your passing, have some exceptions to them. And so it's actually 100% of the income in the year of death. So we're not limited in that same way. It doesn't have that 75% limit. And what's really interesting about it is you can not only carry that donation forward for your estate for a time period, but we can actually take the donation credit backwards. And so we can actually go back in the year before you died and get back the taxes that you paid to the government in that year. And we can go back the year before that. So we can actually pick up a couple years of tax amounts that you've paid, claw that back from the government because you've made this donation, and put that money back into the causes that you're trying to support. And that, in fact, is exactly what Molly has done. And so with Molly's estate, she and her husband have been quite successful. And so they have made donations right away to Habitat. But because of the tax credits that we've received back from Habitat and the other charities, we can now go back and refile Molly's tax returns for these previous years and claim back even more of that tax money that the government had taken from her and put it back into these charities. So the good news is that Habitat and these other charities that are beneficiaries of Molly's estate, it'll take some time, but we do expect to have several $100,000 more to add into Molly's estate when we recover these taxes. And that's because we've planned it out in a way that would allow us to do that. So Molly was quite happy to give that gift of approximately $1 million of her estate, but through careful planning, she's able to leverage it up to even more to make sure that there's more things that Habitat can do. I did note on this slide that there are different rules for companies. I'm not going to get into too many details on the webinar. If you happen to have a private company, if you're a business owner, I would encourage you could get in touch with me or your accountant, and we can tell you a little bit more about those rules. They work a little bit differently, but there are some great advantages as well out of donating from your company. So one specific way to leverage your gift I want to talk a little bit about, and that's about capital gains. So most of us know that if we have an investment and we buy it at a certain price and it goes up in value, when we sell it, the government wants to tax us on the gain. So what they do is they say, well, what did you pay for it? What did you sell it for? That difference is your capital gain, and we're going to tax you on half of that. Basically, we can think of it as about a 25% tax if you're at the top rates. And so if I have an asset that's got a capital gain and I'm thinking about making a charitable gift, there's a really interesting way that I can use that asset to make the gift that saves me a bunch of taxes. Which can help me, or if I choose to, I can pass along to the charity. So it only applies for certain types of assets. And so those types of assets are publicly listed securities, which includes mutual funds, anything that kind of is a market-based investment that you've done. And so most of you that have investment accounts with Credential and Credit Union would have publicly listed securities in those accounts. And when you get your statements, you'll see there's a book value and there's a market value. And the difference between those is your capital gain. So that's what we're talking about. There are also provisions for ecologically sensitive land or cultural property. Those are a little bit more unique and require a bit more work to qualify for. So what I'm going to focus on this morning, is just the publicly listed securities, these investment accounts that have gone up in value. And here's the practical example. Now, I know there's a lot of numbers on this slide, so I'll just try to walk it through to give you the core idea. But the most important part is this. If I took an investment that had a capital gain in it and I sell it, I'm going to have to pay tax on that capital gain. And after I've paid that tax, I donate what's left over, I'm going to get a tax credit. but the tax credit is only going to be on what I've donated, the amount that's left over. Instead, if I qualify for this type of gift, what I can do is not sell the investment, but give the investment directly to the charity as it is. And that way, there's no capital gain. And whatever the full value of that investment is, that's what I'm going to get the tax credit for. Plus, I don't have to pay the capital gain. I get a much better impact, and the charity gets a much bigger gift. In this example on this slide, I'm going to walk you through it, but the end result is the bottom line, that on a $100,000 gift that was all capital gain, it's a $32,000 advantage that I can either keep for myself, knowing that the charity has received a good value, or I can pass that along to the charity. And so here's the simple example. If I had an investment that was worth $100,000 that I had paid nothing for, well, that doesn't happen, but I've just done this to make it the most easy to follow example. And the tax rate is 45%. So if I had sold that $100,000 investment, I would pay capital gains tax of about $22,500. I would have left over $77,500. That's what I would give to the charity. And that would give me a tax credit of $34,875. So I can offset almost $35,000 of tax, but I've already paid $22,000 of tax. So net, I've saved myself about $13,000, but I've given away effectively $87,000 at the end of the day. If instead I took that investment and gave it to the charity and just said, okay, I'm transferring this investment from my account to your account. And this is something that the credit union and Rod's folks can help you set up with the charity. They're experienced at being able to do that. And a lot of the charities are getting better at doing this as well. And I transfer the investment directly. What will happen is I don't pay any tax. So that $22,500 of capital gains tax that I had to pay, that's gone. I don't have to pay that. As well, when the charity writes me the tax receipt, it's not just going to be for $77,000 because I'm giving them something that's a whole $100,000. They're going to give me a tax receipt for $100,000. That means I can offset $45,000 of taxes. So at the end of the day, what did it cost me to give that $100,000? Only $55,000. Compare that to what it cost me up above, which was $87,000. That means I've saved more than $32,000. And all I did, I gave exactly the same thing I was planning to do. I just changed how I did it. Instead of cashing it in and giving it, I gave it in kind. Now, not all of your investments are going to be 100% capital gains. I think the credit union would be the largest financial institution in the world if they could pull that one off for us all. But you are going to have some capital gains. They do that for you. You've got some earnings there. That's what it's all about. And so we can take this exact same example and look at what your assets are and figure out what are the ones that we should do it with. So when does it make sense to take advantage of this? If you're making a gift of more than, I would say, about $5,000, that's when we start to look at it. That's when the numbers start to make sense. If it's less than $5,000, it's probably not worth the extra trouble that you have to do the transfers. But certainly anything over $5,000, I would encourage you to take a look at this. And so if you are like most of my clients and you sit down in November or December and start to think about, okay, I'm going to start making some gifts. If you've got anything that's in that range, I would encourage you to start your conversation with a review with your financial planner or your accountant of your investment accounts and figure out what capital gains do I have? And if I'm going to make my gift, can I do it this way and create more savings for everyone? Again, whether I choose to keep that savings for myself or pass it along to the charity so that they can do even more and better things. So that, to me, if you take nothing else away from this morning, is the one thing I would hope that you would think about, because that's got a huge impact and not enough people do that. There's so much more advantage we could get for our charities. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is, when am I going to give? What's the right timing for doing that? So the first part is you should give when you want to give. That's the most important part. When you are able to, when you feel you've got the financial capacity, and when it feels right. Having made that decision, though, we then look at it and figure out, well, what's the right timing? So remember I said for a gift during your lifetime, there's a 5-year limit on how often you do it or how quickly you can use it up. So that's a good example of where we might spread the gift out if it's a large one over a number of years. But most times the most simple gifts are just cash. It's easy to do and you can control the timing for it. A lot of clients will switch that over to monthly giving. And I know that's a really great way that a lot of charities rely on ongoing support. And it's also easy for you as a donor. You just set it up once, very low administrative costs for everyone. You just get your tax receipt at the end of the year. But anything, as I say, over the $5,000 range, I would encourage you to look at this, what I call in-kind investments. Don't cash it in and give it the way it is. The other future gifts, so if we're not doing gifts right away, that are going to have impact right away, is what I call a future gift. So it's something that I'm giving down the road. The easiest way, again, to do that is in your will. We just change your will to put some clauses in to make that gift. And so for both Molly and Carol, that is something that they chose to do. Now, I'll point out, though, both of them were actually giving during their lifetimes as well, and did have some experience making gifts with in-kind investments as they did it. But a will isn't the only way you can do it. A lot of us have things like registered retirement income funds, RIFs, or tax-free savings accounts, or RRSPs, things that have beneficiary designations on them. And so those are also a way that we can easily get a gift designated out to a charity and get a tax credit that we can use in our estate. It doesn't take anything away from us during our lifetime. It's just whatever is left over in that account goes off to the charity. But there's other ways to do it. And so some of our clients like the idea of committing to making a gift at the end of their life, but getting some of the tax credits now. And so I'll give you an example. It's not Molly or Carol, but we had a client who had a property, an Okanagan property, that they had owned since basically the Second World War. So you can imagine that property had pretty accumulated in value, and it was a large property. But they didn't, and they had some taxes that they paid during their lifetime, but they wanted to keep the property. They wanted to live on it and enjoy it. But they wanted at the end of the day to have it all go to charity. It was going to create a very, very big gift with a very, very big tax credit. But their estate was such that they were ultra conservative investors. So this property was their residence. It wouldn't have any income tax. And their investments were GIC type investments, bonds that had really no capital gains. They didn't have any registered funds. So on their death, there would be no tax to pay. So where we could have saved hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax, it just wouldn't happen because there was no tax to offset it against. And that wouldn't be a problem. It's just an opportunity that was lost. And so when we sat down and reviewed the situation, they confirmed that they would be interested in, can they actually save taxes now? Because really there's this big tax savings they would get on their death. Did it make any sense for them to continue to be paying tax now during their lifetime? And they also confirmed that, yes, we're committed to this. This is going to charity. We are never going to change our mind about that. And so what we did is we set them up with two options. So one option was they could commit to their property going to the charity at the end of their lifetimes, both spouses having died, and do something called a life estate. So what they would do is they would change the title of their property to say, when we die, the estate gets this property. While we're alive, it's entirely ours. We can do anything we want with it. But at the end of the day, it is the charities. By making that legal commitment, we could have gotten them the tax credit now during their lifetime. And so we could pull that forward. It wouldn't be worth quite as much as it was on death because there's a time lag that we had to reduce the value by, but it still would have been a very significant tax credit that they could use in each of the future years to offset their taxes. So it was just a simple way to, again, reorient how they were planning things to be able to get them tax savings now during their lifetime for the very generous big gift that they were going to make on their death, just by reorganizing their affairs. And again, they said, well, what do we care? What are we going to do with the money? And they realized, well, we could actually start giving it to the charity now and start seeing some impact. Now, that wasn't the option they chose. They chose this other option. And the reason for that was they would have still gotten a tax credit that was too big for to be used up in 5 years. They would not have been able to use that tax credit over the 5-year period. And so what we did instead is something called a gift annuity. And what they did was commit some money to the charity of their investments, and the charity committed to giving back to them through an insurance product a guaranteed amount of income for the rest of their lifetime. So what that meant is they gave up the capital. They understood they weren't going to be able to get the capital back, but what they were going to do is get the income back. And because they had done it with a charity in the arrangement, that income came back to them entirely tax-free for the rest of their lifetime. So there were two options there. Now, I'm not expecting you're going to be able to really take away a full understanding of what those options were and why they happened. But what I would say is this: if you are planning to make big charitable donations on your passing, it's really important to have someone take a look at your estate and figure out how are the taxes going to work. Is it going to create an advantage for your estate? And if not, if there's going to be taxes left over, let's at least have a conversation about what you could do during your lifetime to try to pull some of that tax advantage forward. You might as well benefit from it. Why let it fall off the table? And even if you choose to not take it for yourself, why not use it for other purposes to advance for the charity? So that's when to give. And in terms of that timing, well, what I want to do is just let you know that insurance and annuities, as you saw in that last example, can sometimes play a really important role in making that timing work. One of the great things about insurance is that it can produce an amount of money at the time that we need it to happen, or it can produce a stream of money at the times that we need it to happen. And so if the timing isn't quite right about when the gift happens and when the tax credits happen, we can use insurance products to be able to do that. Some of the great things that it can do is create a larger legacy upon the person's death. It can be used to offset the taxes that might apply on death. It can replace the gift. So for some clients, they say, well, I want to give this to charity, but I also want to take care of certain family members. We can use insurance in a way that still allows both to happen. And as you saw in my last example, it could create an annuity of fixed income for a lifetime that's much more preferred for tax purposes. Now, I'm not an insurance agent, so I don't actually sell any insurance or deal with it. I just know that it works really well in certain circumstances. But I do know that Rod has a number of people at the credit union that are insurance agents and certainly have a capacity to be able to do that. And in fact, some of them, one, Doug McMeekin, I've worked with in the past on issues like this. And so they've got that experience. I think I've got maybe a minute. Rod, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about the insurance folks that you have and how they work on these things.
Sure, absolutely, Jeff. Thank you. Yeah, at Interior Savings, we have a number of financial planners who are able to utilize insurance products to enhance a gift that somebody wants to give, or maybe there's a large tax bill upon death from an RSP or a RIF, where you can offset that tax on the RIF with the insurance proceeds, so you can really leave a lot more to your family and to CRA. Lots of things we can do there, but yeah, definitely we have a number of folks, whether it be in Kamloops, Kelowna, or the South Okanagan. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Rob. So I would encourage you to talk to your advisors if that's of interest to you, and they can maybe point you in the right directions. So just to finish off then this morning, the other thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is the idea of who to give to. In my example, both Molly and Carol felt very comfortable directing their money and their gifts directly to particular charities, and Habitat, of course, being one of them. So what I would encourage you to think about is, number one, is the entity that you're giving it to a registered charity? And there is a way to check that. If you typed in listed charities and Canada Revenue Agency on a browser in the internet, it will pull up a list for you that you can search the name of who you're planning to give your money to and check to make sure they are in fact a registered charity. Better yet, have your lawyer or your accountant do that for you to make sure that it's proper. But in some cases, some clients want to give long-term gifts that are large to charities that really don't have a lot of depth in terms of their own administrative resources. And sometimes they're some of the most effective charities. They're just grassroots organizations, a bunch of people getting together, pinching their pennies, making things happen. And so that's happened with some of my clients. And what we're concerned about is if we put too much value, too much money into a small organization, that can sometimes in itself be destabilizing for them. And so what we do is we use foundations. One great one that we've talked about already this morning is the Central Okanagan Foundation. And what we can do is directly gift to them for them to be able to steward and manage and invest well, and then turn the income over to the purposes. So one of my clients that has done that was Evelyn Ainsley, and she created the Evelyn Ainsley Ethical Treatment of Animals Fund. That has been now in effect for more than 10 years and has continued to provide regular income to very small, very community-focused animal rescue and support groups, and has been able to kind of adapt itself to what the needs are in the community. And it's actually inspired other people to make similar contributions to help for animals. It's what we call a donor advised fund. But I'll leave you with this. When we're thinking about when to give and how to give, we want to think about the control and how that needs to be dealt with, what the legacy is that we're trying to create, what type of privacy you want to have, and what some of the costs are that might be involved in doing that. And so finally, just to wrap it up this morning, I hope that we've given you some ideas that you can explore when you've decided to make a gift. How can we take your good gift and make it great? Questions that I would encourage you to ask yourself about the giving process. Why do I want to give? What is it that I'm hoping to accomplish? What is it that means the most to you to do that? Are you for the big and bold or the small and mighty? And how can we tailor your gift to be the right one for those groups? And as I mentioned before, do be careful that when you're making the gift, it is to a registered charity for doing that. And so the takeaway points are, think about your legacy goals, thinking about the impact that you want to make in your community, the change that you want to see happen. How does that fit with your family and your loved ones? How will that impact their lives going forward? What's the source of the gift that you plan to give? And if there are investments with capital gains in them, let's take a look at leveraging that. What's your cash flow and what are your needs? And how can we make sure that that is protected? Because that's the first priority. And secondly, how can we fit your tax profile into when the credits happen and make sure that we can take the best advantage of those credits and get taxes back either for you or for the charity? And then how do we do this all in a process that you are comfortable that your privacy and your control has been protected? So thank you again, Rod and Jaquetta and Andrea for letting me be here this morning and joining me. And I see we're at a few minutes to noon. And so I think maybe I'll just throw it back to Rod, you and Jaquetta, and Andrea, if you have any points to add, and just see if there's any other questions.
Sure, Jeff. Got a question. If I want to leave a large sum of money to charity, say my house or something like that, how would I go about doing it, and what would it cost?
Yeah, so what I would say is there's two parts to that question. It's whether the person's intending to do it right now, or when they say leave it, I suspect they mean in their will. And so I would say the conversation probably first starts, if it's their will, with their lawyer. And I would encourage you to pick someone. I mean, I'll make my ad for me, but it doesn't have to be me, but do pick someone who does this type of work and who's aware of what the tax implications are and are aware of how to structure it for you. And I think that person's first job should be to talk to you about why you want to make that gift. What is it that you're hoping to accomplish? And the second part would be, how can we protect you throughout that process? It's your home. We want you to continue to live in it and do anything you want with it. But when the time comes to make the gift, then we would think about what's the best way to make sure the gift does what you want it to do with the charity, that it's the right charity, that they're capable of doing what you want, and that we can take advantage of taxes. Giving of a home is a good example of a spot where it's quite possible that there would be a very large tax credit, but because a home isn't taxable, there may not be taxes to offset it against. And so somebody who knows what they're doing can talk to you about options that you could start maybe looking at now to get some of that tax advantage for you during your lifetime, because you're going to make the gift on death, rather than just leaving it all happen in the estate and miss a bit of the opportunity. Again, it's not a disaster. It's still a great, wonderful gift. It's just that there might have been some taxes we could save.
Okay, great. Another question, Jeff, if I leave as an estate, large gift through my estate to a charity, would my kids be able to contest that will, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. And it's a very interesting BC question, because in British Columbia, we do have a law called the Wills Variation Law. And it does, unlike any other jurisdiction, allow adult children to claim that a will hasn't been fair to them. So again, as part of this planning process, I think you want someone who's aware of those laws and knows the different techniques for dealing with them. So the first thing we talk about with clients is, would the family challenge it, or would they actually want to see that happen? You know, if they're supportive of it, then maybe it's just a matter of establishing that and helping to clarify what the expectations are. But if there is in fact a risk that it would be challenged, it's your property. You can do with it what you want. And what we need to do then is structure it in a way that prevents those challenges from happening. And we can absolutely do that. This law only applies to wills, and there are other ways for you to transfer your assets. We would just use one of those other methods, still get you what you want to have at the end of the day.
Okay, great. We don't have any more questions at the moment. So Andrea, I just wanted to know if you want to make any final comments before we sign off.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you for inviting me today. I've learned a lot, and I hope the participants have learned a lot and can take away from me that it makes a huge difference to the charities. I mean, I speak on behalf of Habitat for Humanity, but anybody receiving a donation the size that we had from Molly would, and there were other charities, must have been as grateful as we were, and how it's helped our organisation to help other people and to help us to do our mission. Yeah, there's hardly any words really. I was pretty speechless when we got that letter.
Okay, well, that's great. So I want to thank Jeff and Andrea and Jaquetta. Jaquetta set this whole thing up for us, and of course, all of our guests for attending. We encourage you to attend other events scheduled for Embrace Aging Month, and please visit our website at OkanaganEmbraceAging.com for all the events and registration. And we look forward to growing this event in the Okanagan and encourage anyone interested in supporting Embrace Aging in the future to please contact us. And the contact information is available on our website. I've thrown my email address in the chat. If you have questions that maybe you weren't comfortable asking in front of the group, or you think of something later, feel free to send me an email and I'll ensure that that question either gets to Jeff or Andrea. And you will be receiving an email with a link to an online evaluation form. And we welcome everyone's feedback and suggestions for future Embrace Aging events. So thank you all again for attending, and thanks again for our panelists, and everyone have a great day.
Thanks, Rod.